It was intense abdominal pain, curled in a fetal position on my parents' floor crying after I ate anything. I mean, we couldn't even fathom what could be going on, and of course the 15-year-old imagination, I went straight to, I had an incurable rare disease and was gonna die in a few weeks. When I found out it was Crohn's and that it was treatable, I was kind of ecstatic, not realizing, of course, what the next 12 years would bring with it. My diet was completely changed. When I was first diagnosed, it was no lactose, no raw fruits, no fresh vegetables, no seeds, kernels, nuts of any kind, no red meat, no lunch meat from the deli counter because sometimes they use lactose as a filler. I mean, it was literally, my diet was bare bones. And then over time, I had to slowly introduce new things into my diet and keep a food journal and write how I felt after I ate them so that I could kind of find out what my body could tolerate and what it couldn't. I was at the time trying to pretend like I didn't have Crohn's. I'd been on medication for so long that it was being managed. I wasn't really having as bad of symptoms as I was when I was first diagnosed, and I wanted to kind of go to college and not be the girl with Crohn's. I think it was my sophomore year, I started to get really sick, actually with urinary tract infections. And it got to the point where it was so painful to go to the bathroom. Like, my roommate would actually hold my hand when I was in there because it was so painful I would cry. They took a CAT scan in October that showed that my small intestine was extremely swollen. I remember looking at the CAT scan images and just being surprised that I could function with my intestines that swollen. I had 7 years of remission, which was the greatest 7 years of my life. And not to say I didn't still deal with Crohn's on a day-to-day basis, because I did. There would be certain things that I would eat that would bother me, or I couldn't eat certain things because of the Crohn's. So it was still something I dealt with every day, but to a much less extent. The bigger thing for me was, with Crohn's, even if you have the disease portion removed, it's gonna come back. And it was kind of that feeling of dread of waiting for that other shoe to drop, of every stomach ache, is this really a stomach ache, or is this my Crohn's coming out of remission? And that was kind of the one thing looming over those 7 years that kind of put a damper in it, was I just didn't know, I didn't know when the Crohn's would come back. And then it did. I wish I had known to be a bigger advocate for my health and to not be afraid, to hurt a doctor's feelings. You're not going to if you ask for a second opinion. And I'm definitely a much, much bigger advocate for myself at this point. Almost to a fault, you might say. Don't be afraid to admit that you have the disease. That was, I think, a big thing for me. I was so afraid to tell people that I was sick, and I was so afraid to talk about the symptoms and talk about what I was going through, and I kind of, suffered in silence, which unfortunately is what a lot of Crohn's patients do. And now looking back, I wish I could have, shook that 15-year-old self and told her to speak up. But I would say immediately, don't try and pretend you don't have the disease, because you do, and it's not going away, and it's going to be with you forever, and you need to deal with it instead of kind of pretending you don't have it.
Hi, I'm Maxine Smith. I'm a clinical dietitian in the Department of Nutrition Therapy at the Cleveland Clinic. I'm going to be talking to you today about some of the foods that can help you with your Crohn's symptoms. During a flare-up, to minimize your symptoms of diarrhea and bloating and gas, you may want to choose more bland types of foods, such as those associated with the acronym BRAT, which stands for bananas, rice, applesauce, and toast. On the other hand, some of the foods that you may not tolerate well are those high fiber foods, such as things like bran cereals, beans, broccoli, and other gas-forming cruciferous vegetables. In order to get your fruits and vegetables, choosing a canned fruit or a cooked type of vegetable, a steamed vegetable that you can cut with the side of your fork, or a vegetable juice. Some Some foods that are less tolerated are going to be seeds, nuts, corn, and popcorn. These are very difficult to digest. It would be recommended that you stay away from these foods altogether during a flare-up. Butter, margarine, sauces, particularly creamy sauces, and oils. So these are something that you may want to skimp on during a flare-up, but again, eat more abundantly during times when your bowel is rested. There is a lactate milk available where some of that lactose in the milk has been broken down into a more digestible form. And there are lactate tablets, which you can take prior to eating a milk-based food that has lactose, which helps break down that lactose in the milk. Some foods speed up the food moving through the intestine, which can exacerbate the diarrhea. Some of those foods are caffeine, so cola, coffee, tea, even chocolate. Alcohol is another substance that's directly toxic to the intestinal area and also can speed up the movement of food through your digestive tract, causing diarrhea. Hot sauce and spicy foods are another food class that may not be well tolerated. I hope these tips have been helpful to you in controlling your Crohn's symptoms while eating a healthy, well-balanced diet. I'm Maxine Smith from Nutrition Therapy at the Cleveland Clinic.